We're back. It's 2022. We're in this for another year. And as long as the issue of anti-Black racism continues, we're going to be here. That's our commitment. And so we're delighted to see so many of you back. I hope you all had a great holiday period, that your families and friends and neighbors are all well and safe, and that we're going to get energized to continue this really important work of learning, understanding, and translating that into actions in our personal and community lives so that we can start making a change on this most vital and challenging issue. First, I always like to start out with a couple of gratitudes. But first, for those of you, if you haven't been here before, my name is Sherilyn Stevens, and I'm the moderator host. And you are at the Racial Healing, Racial Justice Bahá'í-Inspired series, and welcome. We stay a little late, stay as long as you can. Sometimes the best conversation really gets going towards the latter part of the evening after the presentation. So please stay with us if you can and participate. Gratitudes, first and foremost, always, Nason and Jillian Sturdivant, who provide our hosting and our technical support. You guys want to wave to folks or put your hand up so they can see you all? Aren't they a wonderful married couple? I tell you, these two are such a team, and it's so great to work with them. It really is, really, it just absolutely is. I'm so blessed, so blessed. And I'd also like to thank our presenter tonight, Sue St. Clair, not just because she's presenting, and we'll do a full introduction on her after the devotion, but also because she has taken upon herself to prepare the devotional for this evening, the readings and the music. And Sue just has a true passion for this. She does so many of these. Everyone is unique and carries a significant message. So with that, I want to remind everyone during the devotional portion, chats will be off. If you need anything, you put something in the chat. It will come to myself or to Nason. We'll respond if we can. During the presentation, the chat will also be off. And we may open it up later towards the end of the evening. Typically, we do not, because we're all in the room. And we all want to hear what everyone has to say and think. And sharing our ideas and thoughts and feelings, okay? So having said all of that, let's get started with our devotional.
Dealing with life in this world, O my Lord and my hope, help thou thy loved ones to be steadfast in thy mighty covenant, to remain faithful to thy manifest cause, and to carry out the commandments thou didst set down for them in thy book of splendors, that they may become banners of guidance and lamps of the company above, wellsprings of thine infinite wisdom, and stars that lead aright as they shine down from the supernal sky. Verily art thou the invincible, the almighty, the all-powerful. Abdul Baha.
This rose will open. I know, 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 I know. I know, 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 I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know this rose, I know my fear, I know my fear, I know my soul, I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know
Dealing with life in this world. Sadness and disappointment. It was in 1853 when Baha'u'llah was banished to Baghdad. Baha'i historians report the following occurrence. Mirza Aka John himself has testified, the blessed beauty invents such sadness that the limbs of my body trembled. He has likewise related, as reported by Nabil in his narrative, that shortly before Baha'u'llah's retirement, he had on one occasion seen him between dawn and sunrise, suddenly come out from his house, his nightcap still on his head, showing such signs of perturbation that he was powerless to gaze into his face, and while walking angrily remark, "These creatures are the same creatures who for 3,000 years have worshipped idols and bowed down before the golden calf. Now, too, they are fit for nothing better. What relation can there be between this people and him who is the countenance of glory? What ties can bind them to the one who is the supreme embodiment of all that is lovable?"
Anger. On hearing him, Abdu'l-Baha, two things amazed us. First, he seemed to be wrought up to the highest pitch of anger and indignation. Never before had we heard him speak an angry word. We had known him sometimes impatient and peremptory, but never angry. And then his great excitement had apparently given him command of the Turkish language, which no one had ever heard him speak before. He was in Turkish and in the most impassioned and vehement manner, protesting against and denouncing the treatment of the officers and demanding the presence of the governor, who in the meantime had returned to the city. The officers seemed cowed by his vehemence, and the governor was sent for. He came and seeing the situation said, "It is impossible, we cannot separate these people." The governor returned to his palace and telegraphed to Constantinople. The next day he received a reply granting permission to the followers of the Blessed Beauty Blessed Perfection to accompany him. We were told to prepare for immediate departure, but were not told to what place we were to be sent. When we set out, there were 27 in all in our band.
Arise and rest assured that you will be with me. Tomorrow you shall witness what God has decreed. Rejoice and ease, the hour is approaching in this very city. Rest assured, this promise I give you will be fulfilled. Had you believed in me, had you believed in me, I myself will follow you and will join you Arise in his name. Arise in his name. You are the bearers of the name of God in this state. Heed not your weaknesses and frailty, gaze upon the Almighty, and arise in his name. And arise in his name. Arise and rest assured that you will be with me. Tomorrow you shall witness what God has decreed. Rejoice in these, the hour is approaching in this very city. Rest assured, this promise I give you will be fulfilled. Had you believed in me, had you believed in me, I myself will follow you and will join you in the realm of eternity. Arise in his name. Arise in his name. Arise in his name.
Spiritual hurt and disappointment. I stood, declared Mirza Akajan, rooted to the spot, lifeless, dried up as a dead tree, ready to fall under the impact of the stunning power of his words. Finally, he said, bid them recite, is there any remover of difficulties save God? Say, praised be God, he is God. All are his servants and all abide by his bidding. Tell them to repeat it 500 times, nay, 1,000 times, by day and by night, sleeping and waking, that haply the countenance of glory may be unveiled to their eyes. And rivers of light descend upon them. He himself, I was subsequently informed, recited this same verse, his face betraying the utmost sadness. Several times during those days, he was heard to remark, we have for a while tarried amongst this people and failed to discern the slightest response on their part. Oftentimes, he alluded to his disappearance from our midst, yet none of us understood his meaning.
With life in this world. O Lord, unto thee I repair for refuge, and toward all thy signs I set my heart. O Lord, whether traveling or at home, and in my occupation or in my work, I place my whole trust in thee. Grant me then thy sufficing help, so as to make me independent of all things, O thou who art unsurpassed in thy mercy. Bestow upon me my portion, O Lord, as thou pleasest, and cause me to be satisfied with whatsoever thou hast ordained for me. Thine is the absolute authority to command. The Bob.
This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. Oh, this strength that I have, this strength that I have, this strength that I have. Oh, yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have. Oh, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This strength that I have. Oh, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. Oh, this love that I have, love that I have. Oh, yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This love that I have. Oh, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this love that I have, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Singing, the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. Oh, this pride that I have, this pride that I have, this pride that I have. Oh, yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This pride that I have. I said the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this pride that I have, yeah, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. All this peace that I have, oh, yeah. The world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give me my peace that I have. Oh, yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. Won't you sing about peace? This peace that I have. Oh, yeah, now. The world didn't give it to me. I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. All this joy that I have, this joy that I have, this joy that I have. Oh, yeah, now, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have. I said the world didn't give it to me. Don't you know that this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Oh, I said the world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. The world didn't give it, the world can't take it away.
Resistance Revival Corps.
Wow, that was great. I love that last song especially. That was, yes, that was that down home beat, right? That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Sue. I tell you, she always does these wonderful presentations or devotionals and presentations. I'm going to introduce Sue in just a minute. But before I do have a couple of announcements. One, I'd like to thank every 124 of you for showing up this evening. This is a really great number. We're excited. The house is so full. So thank you all so much for coming. I just have a couple of announcements. I want to do it now because I know people can't always stay through till the end, where I usually have been doing these kinds of announcements. I do want to tell you briefly about our upcoming presentation, which is going to be January 2nd. And that's called Urban Triage, which is the name of a local organization here in Madison, Wisconsin. And it's a model of community healing, empowerment, and co-conspirators in action. And the founder and CEO of that organization, Brandy Grayson, will be presenting. Her entire organization, it's a nonprofit, is based on Dr. Joy DeGruy's book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And I think many of you know Dr. Joy. She's a Baha'i. It's a groundbreaking work into understanding the effects of trauma throughout generations and its impact and the impact of racism from that perspective. So I really encourage you all to attend this. We are reaching out more to the wider community, not to just not have Baha'is present, but others in the community who are doing the work. And this is a great example of what a community organization can do. So I want to just bring that to your attention. And yeah, thank you, Nathan. He put it in the chat there for me, January 22nd. Second thing, and then there's one more. Second thing, if you'd like to be on our subscriber list to know about our upcoming presentations, please put your email address in the chat, or you can, and I'll give you our email address, which is rhrj19@gmail.com. We don't share this with anyone. We keep our announcements to a minimum, but this way, you know when things are going on and you get a lot of detailed information about that. Again, thank you, Nason. He's got it in there in the chat already. Or you can send it to me directly if you wish. And if you would include your city and state, we'd like to know how far we're reaching across the country. And we've reached pretty far, actually. And we're working on going deeper over the course of this coming year. And then the final thing I wanted to announce to everyone is that we're going to be undergoing a name change. And we're going to change the name from Racial Healing, Racial Justice to Racial Healing, Justice, Unity, where we see this more as a process. The outcome, unity, is the whole point of the revelation of the founder of the Baha'i faith, Baha'u'llah, and it's unity and diversity. That is the ultimate goal. That is why it is so important that we overcome and supplant this insidious racism that affects us all so terribly. So I wanted to let you know about that. You'll hear more about that. And I'm also looking for a graphic designer who can take the concept and give it some life for me. So if you know of someone with some skill sets, I would greatly appreciate hearing from you. Okay, so having said all those things, let me tell you about Sue Ballew-St.Clair. Sue served as a Baha'i pioneer in Liberia in West Africa, where she first taught community health nursing to midwifery students, and then signed on as a USAID to participate in the development of a primary village health worker training program for individuals to serve at the first level of need. And I've gotten to know Sue a little bit over the past year. We've been in similar spaces. And I want to tell you that when Sue went pioneering, she took her 2 young sons with her. And so this was no easy feat by any stretch, you know, to be a mom with 2 young ones and to raise up and to answer the call. And she did so. And the fruits of that are born in her 2 sons, let me tell you. So let me go on with her bio here. Later, as a part of a dual nursing and public health graduate studies at Emory University, she was given leave to spend time in Malawi, South Africa, where she developed an independent primary village mental health worker training program. This allowed for trained village primary mental health workers to be available at the village level for the first time in that country. This work won her Emory University's Graduate School of Public Health Gangarosa Award in International Health and the School of Nursing's Graduate Innovative Project Award. She ended by earning double master's degrees in nursing and international public health. In her professional field as a psychiatric nurse practitioner and Director of Nurse Practitioner Services for an organization, Sue won the organization's Outstanding Professional Award. She is now partially retired, but her focus on service to the Baha'i faith is ongoing and tireless and ceaseless. She didn't say that, I did, because I know her. Her relationship with Baha'i teachings and service to mankind is focused on addressing the most vital and challenging issue, racism, in this country. The importance of the roles of people of African descent, the pupil of the eye, being centered in that work is central to her focus. So without further ado, the chat is off, friends. Please welcome, with your hands, however you want to do it, Sue Ballew-St.Clair. Thank you for coming, Sue. We so appreciate you. And you're on mute. There you go.
Unmuted. Oh, thank you. Wow. Hello, everyone. I see a few faces here that I haven't seen in a very long time. Let's see. I know Gwen. Gwen. Where is she? There she is. Gwen Ellis Cotton. And there were a couple other ones that I don't see at the moment. Of course, Colette and there's so many here. Susan Burke. But there's Ellie. So from different areas of the country, I'm seeing individuals that I know. And I just trying to think of her name, but I met her in Liberia. Where are you?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. She and her husband, Mike Stokes, came to Liberia also.
Oh yeah. Hello, Susan.
Where are you?
Helga here.
Well, I don't see her at the moment, but
I don't
anyway.
have my video on, sorry. But
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're not here for me to do Old Home Week. You're here to hear what I have to say, and hopefully it will be meaningful for you. So I'm going to share screen. What I'm going to be talking about is, I'm glad there are so many white brothers and sisters who are here, because I hope that this is something that will resonate with you. You know, we talk so much about what racism does and the harm it does for us as people of African descent, because it's so up front and center, and it's so, it has been such a traumatic and in-your-face kind of trauma that we have suffered over the centuries. But I think what's happening now is that people are starting to do research regarding what's happening with how it affects white people. I mean, you can't do stuff that you do to other people without it harming you as well. And if there's this white supremacy that is creating an environment for people, for white people to have, as now we're calling it, privilege and so on, to have these possibilities that others are not supposed to have, you grow up in that. And it does things to you. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to remember to make it there we go. So just to go back a little bit at the beginning, there was not such a thing as white supremacy before the 17th century. If a person who had colored skin was asked what color they are, they might say they're white. They might say they're light colored. Someone who's black might say they're black, but there was nothing more to it than saying my hair is brown or my hair is blonde or I have blue eyes. There was nothing more to it than that. But around the time of the late 1600s, the term white supremacy began to be something that was generated first in Europe, in Germany, as they were trying to make a difference between people who were white or Aryan and people who were of other even whites who were from the lower southern parts of Europe were not included. It was like the British and French and all those northern European countries that were considered to be a part of that. So the invention of a white racial identity was motivated by a need to justify the enslavement of Africans. In the words of Eric Williams, a historian who later became the first prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago, slavery was not born of racism. Rather, racism was the consequence of slavery. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. White supremacy is defined as both the belief that the white race is inherently superior to other races, and that white people should have control over people of other races, as well as the social, economic, and political systems that collectively enable white people to maintain power over people of other races. Now, I want to clarify that using the term white supremacy, this is what those who were landowners and wealthy participants developing this country, this is what they called it. But they used it to give to whites who were not of their class something that would make them feel like they were better than Blacks and better than anyone else that was of a different color. And so in that way, they were able to control other white people that were of the merchant class and farmers and so on, to allow them to do what they tell them to do, even if it was against their best interest. And we'll see how that unfolded as we got later into the time where we're living now. So the term white supremacy, as it was initially used, has shape-shifted. And here in the United States, it contributes to a continuing challenge for the dismantling and deconstruction of I forgot what I said, for the dismantling and deconstructing of it, to be able to do that. So the term white is a term, as I mentioned earlier, it's a racialized classification that didn't exist before. The concept of whiteness has particular resonance in the Anglosphere countries. We know it for the United States, but also for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and South Africa. These are all British, original British run countries. The Universal House of Justice, in its July 22nd letter, I don't know how many of you, but I have read it over and over and over again and trying to understand particular words and particular phrases. And this is one of those phrases that struck me almost immediately the very first time I read it, that racism is a profound deviation from the standard of true morality. And when we think about the country that we live in, how it was developed, what is it called? Our Constitution, the Constitution of the United States. It states that it's for everyone, that we, the people, are created to have a more perfect union and so on and so forth. But they were talking about themselves. They weren't talking even about other whites who were not of their class. And they definitely weren't talking about Blacks. And so from the very beginning, we have a country where true morality was something that could not have existed, because true morality would have meant that everyone would have been included, everyone would have been considered as they were developing what the country was going to be, what was going to look like, and as they developed the institutions that were going to care for the populace of this country. But the way in which they developed it was for the institutions to protect the privileges of those who were white. As a result, and this applies to those who are white, I don't know how many pick that up, it deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capability. Just think about that. it deprives a portion of humanity of the opportunity to cultivate and express the full range of their capability. So then we have to ask ourselves questions. What is it that if I'm white, I am not able to cultivate and express the full range of who I am? And so we're going to be talking about what that looks like as we go forward. And then it also blights the progress of the rest of humankind. And we do know what that looks like. There's a phrase called Magnetian Psychology. And this phrase is used when there is an oppressive society. And in that oppressive society, this kind of psychology permeates the prevailing values and beliefs of that society. The oppressor is identified in terms of the sublime and beautiful, while depicting the oppressed in terms of absolute evil and ugliness. So everything that could be done, could be said, could be acted upon, that would make people who were not white to be perceived as evil or ugly or lazy or unintelligent. We know all the terms, there's so many terms that were used. To feed to the white populace of the country, this is what you're dealing with. And so it caused a generation of fear in the hearts of white people as it relates to people who are Black, especially Black men. It caused a disgust, a feeling of disgust and a feeling of no need to care for, no need to be concerned about people who were Black, because they're just absolute evil and ugliness. They're not like us. This was fed to the people who were white. So this worldview then gave Americans the idea that if you're white, like you see, you know how it goes, if you're white, you're right. It's aligned with the white racial frame in teaching us that whites and everything related to whites is superior. There's an old adage in the Black community, so this even affects Black people, that we would prefer to buy our ice from the white man because his ice is colder than that purchased from the Black. Now, some of these concepts, some of these ways of thinking are, when you talk about it like this, it seems ridiculous. But this is how we are conditioned when we're living in the soup of racism. So the oppressor without becomes an oppressor within. Now, this applies to people who are oppressed. They take on that same idea that they are unworthy, they are not worth anything. And so then they oppress others that are of their own race or their own nationality or of their own culture. The well-known inferiority complex of the oppressed originates in this process of internalization. So people talk about reverse racism. There's no such thing. I'm telling you, there's no such thing. But what there is an internalization of the oppression that has been given them by the people, by the white supremacist idea that has been fed to white people, and by virtue of that, indirectly to Blacks as well. So because of this internalization and its attendant but repressed rage, the oppressed may act out on each other the very violence imposed on them. You know, so many people will say, like when there's a riot, why are they destroying their own neighborhood? That could be one of the possible reasons. They become auto-oppressors as they engage in self-destructive behavior, injurious to themselves, their loved ones, and their neighbors. Now, this should not be taken as something that is a simplistic explanation, because the whole process is very complex, and there's a lot of diving deep into it to understand the complexity of it. It's a daily struggle to fit in. This is written by a Milwaukee independent columnist who's Black. It is a constant balancing act to fit the white middle class values thrust upon people of color. It requires developing the skills known as code switching, where people of color switch back and forth from being whom they are to being who whites accept them as. There was a young Black man who said the only kind of Black man they want to see in the space is a Black man who is neutered. And I think some of you can understand the thinking behind that statement. So the school, the history books, the comic strips, theater halls, all these enforce cognitive dissonance and even self-hate. The closer the schoolboy gets, talking about Blacks now, the closer the schoolboy gets to the social circle of the oppressor, the more he learns to disparage what he is by birth and race. On the other hand, he is assimilated into the dominant culture. And on the other, he is made to break away from his own culture. As he moves through various stages of education, he progressively reduces his contact with his relatives and indigenous culture. He increasingly enters the social orbit of the oppressors. Then comes a stage when he must choose either his own group and culture or the ruling group and its alien outlook. Acceptance of one entails rejection of the other. A gain in some respects involves a loss in others. Now, I'm saying a bit about the effect on Blacks because I think there is this two sides of the coin kind of thing going on. And we do know a lot about the woundedness that takes place among Blacks. But the reason why it's here is called compare and contrast. So racism has wounded generations of non-whites far more deeply than whites will ever know. They can't if they haven't experienced it, right? Many whites, however, still partake of the privileges of color bequeathed to them by the legacy of historic racism, unable or unwilling to divest themselves of the advantages of being white in a world that still touts white cultural values and allocates rewards for accepting such values. As a result, racial fear and hatred still dominate interracial interactions in most multiracial societies. This is Richard Thomas, and many of you may know Richard Thomas. This is his statement. I want to pause for a second and share a story. For those of you who have read Caste, you may remember where she talked about one section where this young Black woman in her teens went with a white woman into the town, and they were selling eggs. And the white woman asked her to help her to sell the eggs, and she would give her, a portion of the money that she would earn as a result. And so they went door to door selling the eggs. They get to this one door, and the white woman sees the Black girl standing behind the white woman with the eggs, tells them to go to the back, which she had never told the white woman that's selling the eggs to do before. So they go to the back. Now, on the way back to the area where they live, there was nothing stated, no conversation between the two of them. It was a very different environment that was existed between them going back than what there was going to town. The woman never asked her to go with her again. And the story behind that was that as whites, they have to act in a certain way to be perceived to be a part of the white group. And it's fascinating thing as you delve into this is that if you don't, you also are disenfranchised, not considered one of them. And so it's got to be possibly, and as we discuss this, maybe some of the white individuals that's in the room will share something, but it's got to be something that's an unconscious kind of knowing of how I'm supposed to be in a particular environment where there are whites and Blacks together. There is a fact. White men consider themselves superior to Black men. Another fact, Black men want to prove to white men at all costs the richness of their thought, the equal value of their intellect. To speak a language is to take on a world, a culture. The anti-Negro who wants to be white will be whiter as he gains greater mastery of the cultural tool that language is. The fact of having to speak nothing but the other's language when the other was the conqueror, ruler, and oppressor was at once an affirmation of him, his worldview, and his values, a concession to his framework, and estrangement from one's own history, values, and outlook. So now we get to the point where we start talking about how this impacts white people and how they are harmed as a result of this whole issue. So one of the first things has to do with the government programs. And I don't know how many have read Dying of Whiteness. It was written by a professor at Vanderbilt University here in Nashville. And very clear stories about doing everything that they could to keep Blacks and people who were minorities from government programs, from Affordable Care Act, from anything that would benefit them in their health care, even to their own detriment. The group that benefits the most from affirmative action programs are actually white women. I wonder how many in this call or in this space are aware of that. The irony of this is that white women, according to reports, are actually some of the staunchest opponents of affirmative action programs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that white people are the largest beneficiaries, and this has come up again and again and again throughout the years that I have been studying stuff like this, that white people are the largest beneficiaries when it comes to government assistance programs. But yet the perception is that Blacks are taking all of the government assistance programs for themselves. And why should we do that? We need to get rid of them. And we look at the Affordable Care Act, called Obamacare, and you know the amount of opposition that took place when white Americans were trying to prevent Obamacare from becoming the law. And this took place year after year after year during the whole time that Obama was in office. But according to one report, when analyzing those who gained health coverage from 2010 to 2015, 43% of them were white, and 32% were Latino, and only 15% were Black. So more information about how white people are harmed. Let's look at psychological costs. This has to do with the loss of mental health and an authentic sense of self. How can you, when you have to live in such a way where you have to always be sure that you are living according to the way you're supposed to be and doing things that you're supposed to do if you're white? Like if you're living in an all-white community, you can't sell to someone Black if there is a homeowners association or some other kind of program that says you can't, even if you wanted to. That's just one small, simple example. I'm sure you can come up with many more. They're socialized into a world of white supremacy that presumes that white people are superior to people of color and deserve the better positions in society. The internalization of these cultural messages, consciously and unconsciously, and they're expected to act in ways that support the current racist system. The term expected, I should have highlighted that in red also. You're expected to act in ways that support the current racist system. For example, interrupting people of color, thinking we are smarter, engaging in savior behavior. I don't know how many times when I will say something, and this is in a board meeting or in a group meeting, I will say something about what I think, about what I think should be, I think one more, isn't it? something about one more still, something about what I think should, just an idea to contribute to the conversation. And nobody, if it's predominantly white sitting there, nobody has anything to say about it. And maybe a couple of people speaking, and then someone white will say almost exactly the same thing. And say, and then everybody, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And I'm going, okay, I think I just said that. Sometimes I'll say that, sometimes I won't. More often these days, I will say, I just said that. But they're denied accurate self-knowledge and develop a distorted view of who they are. We often need to deny our emotions and empathy to exist in a racist society. These factors all limit the development of a healthy sense of self. And this is Diane Goodman. This is in the document that she wrote, The Cost of Racism to White People and Why They Should Care About Racial Justice. Some of the social costs: the loss and the diminishment of relationships. How many whites have Blacks who are close friends of theirs? How many whites have Latinos who are friends? Or people who are from the Philippines, or people who are from the Middle East, or people who are from any other area that's not considered to be an appropriate white country to come from? How many have friends from those areas? And what about segregation in housing and schools, job stratification? There's often limited opportunity to organically develop meaningful relationships across race. So those who really want to form relationships with people who are not like them, they have to work at it. They have to really work hard at it, because it's not something that is automatically approved of or allowed in the areas in which they tend to settle. Even cross-racial contact does not always eliminate the barriers to deeper and more authentic relationships. And of course, this is due to what we all know to be distrust, discomfort, biases, or cultural differences. Whites can experience disconnection from their own friends and families if they act outside accepted norms, such as dating or marrying a person of color, challenging racist stereotypes and jokes, or advocating for racial justice. Now, what about the moral and spiritual costs? Think about the loss of ethical and spiritual integrity. White people commonly feel some guilt or shame for being white. And this is something that I'm sharing because, not being white, I can't know if those who are white are feeling guilt or shame. So I'm sharing with you what the researchers say, and you have to tell me if that resonates with you. For being part of a legacy that has oppressed people of color and indigenous people. For intentionally or unintentionally benefiting from and perpetrating racism, and for not doing enough to dismantle it. Whites sometimes face moral ambivalence of wanting to do, quote unquote, the right thing, but facing social pressures and realities. Wanting to send one's children to a racially integrated school, but wanting them to receive the best quality education in the safest neighborhood. Now this, I think, is making it a very simplistic thing. I think there's a whole lot more to it than just that. But I'm sharing with you the research. I want to bring up, I'm trying to think of the movie where the black coach came into the community and became the head coach, and the coach that was there, that was white, became the assistant coach. And all of the problems that took place between the two of them and between the white football players and the black football players, it's a fascinating story to watch. I've watched it like 5 or 6 times to pick up the kinds of ways in which they had to step outside of the way in which they were conditioned in order to have meaningful relationship with the opposite race. So they're faced with ethical challenges, the awareness of racial injustice, and disconnection from other human beings. White people may experience spiritual emptiness and pain. Then there's the intellectual part. whites lose the opportunity to develop a full range of knowledge about themselves, about others, and about the world. Just think of our school system and how the books that are allowed to be used in the school system are very whitewashed, so that what you get about history in America, and also history in world history, what you get as far as history in Europe, European history, or African history, or Asian history, it's all whitewashed to make those who are white appear to be the best, the better of anyone else who has history in the world. So due to the pressure to assimilate into mainstream American culture and whiteness, many white people have also lost the knowledge of and connection to even their particular European ethnic ancestry. They are taught myths about meritocracy and equal opportunity that belie the realities of institutional and systemic racism and fuels ignorance. So we know about the innovation and how that gets stifled, because if it's only white people that are doing innovation, that means all the other people that have creative and innovative ideas, that gets lost. And so they're operating in a vacuum. And the refusing to hire people of different racial backgrounds disadvantages these companies, and they cannot survive. They cannot last if they do not allow for others to come in and share what they can contribute to the process. The whole idea of the environment, environmental injustice impacts every person on the planet, regardless of race. So just deciding that you're going to choose a zone where people live that are disposable people to get rid of your waste, or what happened in the Flint water crisis, the fracking on the indigenous lands, all of that is affecting the world in which we live in ways that are going to harm everyone. The whole idea of no one is free until we are all free. I'd like to read the quote from Nelson Mandela. I am not truly free if I am taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I cannot be free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. This is a man, I came across this man, and I ordered his book and read it. It's fascinating. It's a white man in Kentucky who, in his growing up years, he grew up around elderly Black people, learned a lot from them, but he knew enough from his learning that he was struggling. Whereas, many whites don't realize the struggle that they're going through to live their lives in the best way that they can. But because of his exposure, he did realize his struggle. He did realize the hidden wounds that he carried. He counsels that when you begin to awaken to the realities of what you know, you are subject to staggering recognitions of your complicity in history and in the events of your own life. Of this wound, he says, this psychic and emotional damage that racism does to white people, I have borne it all my life, always with the most delicate consideration for the pain I would feel if I were somehow forced to acknowledge it. The crisis of racial awareness, the sense of being doomed by my history to be, if not always a racist, then a man always limited by the inheritance of racism, condemned to be always conscious of the necessity not to be a racist, to be always dealing deliberately with the reflexes of racism that are embedded in my mind as deeply, at least, as the language I speak. I was talking with someone and they were saying that, and it made sense to me, that being a racist is not necessarily what everyone is. It's that you have racist moments. You have times when you do things that are racist, behaviors that are racist, and that's when it comes out. I don't know how many of you heard the story of Liam Nielsen, is that his name? He's from Ireland, and there was a young woman who was raped white, and the first thing he asked was, what color was he? And she said it was a Black man. he grabbed a bat and started walking up and down the streets, daring anyone Black to show up because he was going to beat him to death. And he shared that on a talk show. And he was very apologetic that he had had those kinds of feelings, and that's what first came up for him. But he said, I'm not a racist. So there's this horrible dichotomy that exists within inside a person's conscious and unconscious being, where they can say, I'm not a racist, but yet the whole idea of cognitive dissonance, they end up doing racist kinds of behaviors that can be very harmful. So the hidden wound can be considered an exercise in white anti-fragility. Berry finds the stain of racism so stubborn that it would be foolish to think anyone can be exempt, individually or collectively. For the last third of the book, he explores the woundedness of modern American culture as a whole, the diseases of alienation and mechanization in economics, education, marriage, and agriculture, seeking especially to hear the voices of the poor who do not meet mainstream conceptions of respectability and success. I don't know how many of you know who Ruha Benjamin is. She's Black, she's a professor, and I believe she's a professor at Yale. She has another book out. I think about since the time that I copied these quotes, her book was due to be published, but I think it's now out, it's published. But here's a couple of quotes from her in her book. One of the things that's coming to light is how the global spread of a microscopic virus is placing the ravages of racism and inequity under the microscope. But the fact is, we don't all see the same thing. Racism has a way of actually distorting our vision. Intertwined with many other forms of social domination, racism is mercurial, innovative, even viral. And then she goes on to say, anti-Blackness distorts reality, interpersonally and institutionally, exposing Black people to a threatening environment well before the pandemic, even in childhood. Then I'm sure many of you have heard of Robin DiAngelo, who coined the term white fragility. And this is where she talks about how the kind of defensiveness that takes place where white people exhibit when their ideas about race and racism are challenged, and particularly when they feel implicated in white supremacists. So I'm sorry, supremacy. Then she goes on to say that they want to not be associated with anything negative because of the skin color that she notes is a privilege largely afforded to white people. Although most school shooters, domestic terrorists, and rapists in the United States are white. It'd be interesting to know how many are aware of that. I think almost every Black person is definitely aware of it. It is rare to see a white man on the street reduced to a stereotype, however. It was that individual that did it. Likewise, people of color often endure having their views attributed to their racial identities. The luxury of impartiality is denied them. So she goes on to say that our minds and bodies play host to a pathogen, and I love that she calls it that seeks to replicate itself, sickening us in the process. And so what's beautiful about this is that it's saying that you are a human being created by God, you're noble, and you are meant to be a spiritual being who is here on this earth to learn attributes and virtues that you can take with you, because those are the only things you take with you. But then you come into this country, if you're born in this country, you have to endure being infected with the pathogen of racism. Like a mutating virus, racism shapeshifts in order to stay alive. And this whole idea of shape-shifting, the Universal House of Justice shared that, I think I have it later on in this presentation, what the House of Justice says about that. So This is a beautiful quote. What happens when a white person encounters something that causes them to disassociate or causes them cognitive dissonance? In order to prevent chronic discomfort, whites may learn not to notice. But in not noticing, one loses opportunities for greater insight into oneself and one's experience. A significant dimension of who one is in the world, one's whiteness, remains uninvestigated, and perceptions of daily experience are routinely distorted. Privilege goes unnoticed, and all but the most blatant acts of racial bigotry are ignored. Look what happened when George Floyd was killed. It caused a massive, because it was filmed, and it took so long, caused a massive it cut through all of the cognitive dissonance that someone might have had until they had no choice but to notice. I included this quote because I think it's so relevant to what we're trying to do at this time in history. First, they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Martin Niemöller, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name, but he was a German. He was a Protestant minister, and this is what he wrote after he was arrested and put in a concentration camp. And upon his release, he realized how wrong he was, that he didn't speak out long before they came for him. And it speaks to the whole idea that we are all one human race. And if we don't care for each other, eventually each of us will suffer the consequences. I'm going to play this.
Okay, my white people, here's an important message from a black friend. As difficult and exhausting as this moment is, and it is, it's just going to get more challenging and more uncomfortable. But of all the battles you have to fight, the biggest one is white fatigue. Let me explain. White supremacy is the pernicious narrative that white people are superior to black folks and just about everyone else. White fatigue is what happens when most white people who don't want to think of themselves as white supremacists, and who might even fight that narrative, get tired, give up, and let white supremacy win. Alexander Hamilton is the poster child of white fatigue. He belonged to an anti-slavery society, but when we adopted the Constitution, he agreed to the 3/5 compromise, white fatigue's original sin. Men like Hamilton felt they couldn't get a constitution without slavery, so they gave up trying and gave actual slave owners more power. After the Civil War, we put amendments in the Constitution to guarantee equal black citizenship. White supremacy formed a resistance, but it was white fatigue that lost the cause. We pulled Union troops from the South, and a Supreme Court full of Northerners paved the way to Jim Crow and streets full of consolation trophies. White supremacy put them up, but white fatigue whistled past them every day for over a century. The Civil Rights Movement tried to stop white supremacy by shaking most white people out of white fatigue, disrupt normal, televised violence of white supremacists to jolt people sleepwalking through white fatigue. And for a minute, it worked. Hope and equality were adrenaline shots to the conscience of America. We got a second Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and a Fair Housing Act. But Martin Luther King had to die to get that last one. And then we got white fatigue. Too tired to win the war on poverty, white fatigue let it become the war on crime, then the war on drugs. White fatigue mistook mass incarceration for justice. And then a pandemic hit. White eyes opened as black and brown bodies filled the front lines, and a host of hardly paid people were labeled essential. And then this. A knee to the neck of the facade of American equality, and an image taken by a courageous black girl just as the nation's eyes were already opening. And suddenly, white America is more awake to the distance between white life and black life than it has ever been. But right now, Black America is losing sleep over white fatigue. It looms larger than any president, no matter how much of a white supremacist one proved himself to be. He might be defeated, but if the majority of white people get tired, or too busy, or distracted, or fooled into thinking we've actually won, this momentum will be killed by white fatigue. I'm telling you right now, it's gonna get more uncomfortable. It's going to be confusing and exhausting. You will want it to stop. But do not stop. New legislation isn't the end. This election isn't the end. There is no end because white supremacy will never quit, so Black people cannot ever quit. You must battle white fatigue. Don't get tired. Don't ever give up. Do not wave the white flag.
House of Justice. I don't think there was anything that was more powerful for me than to read through several of the letters from the House of Justice in which they gave terms to the racism that exists in this country. Because the letters were to American Baha'is, to the racism that exists in this country. If you haven't looked up these terms, I strongly encourage you to look them up, because when you do, I think you will be horrified
Hi.
by what they are telling us.
Get back? Yeah.
They call it baneful cancerous affliction, transmuted into forms that are multifaceted, less blatant, and more intricate, thus more intractable, meaning increasingly difficult to get rid of, and increasingly difficult to heal. Pernicious blight. And then they told us about the dire warnings that Abdu'l-Baha gave. You know, so often when we talk about Abdu'l-Baha, hopefully we are getting past that now. But so often talking about Abdu'l-Baha, we talk about how, oh, Abdu'l-Baha, he loves us. He's so kind. He's, oh gosh, I love Abdu'l-Baha. It's always these nice, kind, loving comments that we make. But Abdu'l-Baha was surgery. A different word. He was whatever he needed to be to get us to hear and understand what he was telling us. And you know the dire warnings he gave us as related to racism, that if they didn't deal with it back then, he promised that blood would run in the streets. And then Shoghi Effendi broke it down. A transient analysis of very clear, definite statements about racism and what it is, what it's doing, and where it's going. Devastating ferocity, countervailing processes. Now that's another term that's for this time. And that means that no matter what we do to try to heal racism, to try to overcome racism, the white supremacists are going to find ways to keep things not only as they are, but to actually make it even, to take it back to a time that they perceive to be good for the white people of this country. And we have already seen evidence of that with the voting rights acts that have taken place in several states, where they have changed them so that they've gone back to making it very difficult for anyone who's not white to be able to vote. And then again, the whole idea of racism being a profound deviation from the standard of true morality. We don't know what true morality looks like, people. We don't know. We are working on what's moral and ethical without the standard of what a true morality is, other than what the teachings of the Baha'i faith tell us to look for. Just going to share this from James Baldwin. I love his truthfulness in the things that he says.
Growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. I am stating very seriously, and this is not an overstatement, that I picked the cotton, and I carried its market, and I built the railroads under someone else's whip for nothing. For nothing. If one has got to prove one's title to the land, isn't 400 years enough? 400 years, at least 3 wars. The American soil is full of the corpses of my ancestors. Why is my freedom or my citizenship or my right to live there, how is it conceivably a question now? What we are not facing is the results of what we've done. What one begs the American people to do for all our sakes is simply to accept our history until the moment comes when we, the Americans, we, the American people, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it, by their very presence, will wreck it.
Oops. So just briefly, I know that this is I want to get to some of the things that we can be doing as Baha'is, but just briefly, Robert DiAngelo calls it a white problem. Malcolm Gladwell, it requires that you change your life. And Ijeoma Oluo, anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself. And it's the only way forward. Now, I'm not going to read this from Ruhia Kanum. If you have not read it before, all you have to do is Google Ruhia Kanum Talk on Racism, Letter to America, 1961. But it's just simply her letting us know that the way that we thought, meaning the white people, thought about how the way in which they were doing things as far as developing the Baha'i faith in America is the right way, and that the rest of the world needs to get used to it, is not the way, that it's only a process and that we haven't gotten there yet. So this again is a quote that I think, and this is for my white brothers and sisters, when the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. That's the day when, and I think we're there. I think we're at that time in history when being tight in the blood is no longer comfortable. More and more people who are of the white persuasion are starting to say, I'm ready to take on the pain. I'm ready to take on the discomfort because it's too uncomfortable here in this bud. I do want to blossom, and I do want to become flowers with the other colors of flowers within the garden. And so I think this is a beautiful quote that addresses that. This is just more information. We'll move past that. I want to get to this. So the work that we're supposed to be doing is community building work. And in order to do community building work, there's certain things that we have to make sure that we understand. And the Universal House of Justice, the National Spiritual Assembly, has given us so much information over the last 25 years as we have been developing a different way of forming community within our towns, our villages, our clusters. And we've learned some things. And these are things we can take with us into this next 9-year plan. And I will read each one of these because I think each one is very important. These are my thoughts, my understanding of what is happening with community building and what's needed. And you can always take this and adapt it and change it to your understanding as well. But always comparing it to what is the House of Justice saying? Does it match with what the House of Justice is telling us? So we want to form true and effective relationships with community members. So we have to ask ourselves, what does it look like to form true and effective relationships? We want to become real friends, but what does that look like to become real friends? We want to listen to the members of the community regarding their needs, ensuring that they become the real protagonists of their community service. And how do we do that? So how do we stand out of the way so that they can become the real protagonists of their community? We want to encourage creativity, thought, imagination, consultation, independent investigation of their own reality, rather than what we perceive it to be. Staying as much as possible in the background, but helping them as they figure it out. We want to make sure we're having fun and that we're being enthusiastic about the whole process. Are you encouraging authentic conversations? And what does it mean to have an authentic conversation? You know, we have to take these terms and ask ourselves questions. Okay, so they tell us to be authentic. Okay, what does that look like? How do I know when I'm being authentic? What behaviors do I practice if I'm being authentic? If you're white or Persian, prepare ahead of engaging within neighborhoods of Black people by studying the history of racism in America. It's appalling to me that whites and Persians think that they are fine as long as they're studying the Ruhi courses to go into a neighborhood of Black people and begin to talk with them about the Baha'i faith. How can you know how to engage with them if you know nothing about who they really are? And if you know nothing about what they're dealing with as Black people, or if you know nothing about what their history is? Your idea of what history is in America and their idea, as you know from all the statistics that we read, is very different. So it's so important, if we want to be successful at this, that we do the hard work of preparing ourselves ahead of time before we engage with them. Study the racist and caste-based attitudes and behaviors you practice in order to know what to focus on in cleansing your own heart. Every chance I get, I talk about the copper to gold group, because that's what they do. It's white people that come together in a small gatherings to each week look at just one of the things that has been learned that white people can do that can be harmful to Blacks and people of color and indigenous people. They learn what it looks like, how to avoid it, and how to recognize it when it comes up within them so that they can gradually begin to clear these behaviors and these attitudes out of their consciousness. So it's helping to make unconscious become conscious, and helping to make conscious be understood as being harmful so that they can change whatever they have that's conscious that can be harmful to Black people. If anyone who's interested, I urge you to get in touch with Cheryl Lynn or Susan or Chuck. I saw him on the line here. It's a whole team there that is working to make this happen. Currently, they have 5 of these going on, and each one has a certain number of individuals that are in it. They're taking 20. Okay, they're taking
over 100.
Excellent, and so this is how you're going to do it. You can't do it without doing something like that. I promise you, you can't, because of this soup of racism. What did Ruhi Benjamin called it? A pathogen that you're infected with without your having anything to do to make that happen. It just happened. But now you can do something consciously about it. That has to happen as you're trying to do this community building work. Spend more time listening and then believe what you're told. Then we are told by the House of Justice, by the National Spiritual Assembly now, that how important it is to center Blackness in the work. Let them be at the forefront. because as pupil of the eye, they can see the way forward and help all of us to know what direction we should be going in and how we should be going there. Now for this upcoming 9-year plan, we are just beginning to understand what is going to be happening. We're just getting the teasers right now. But by Rizwan, we're going to be getting the full thing. And we're told that it's going to be very different by the end of it, these next 25 years, than what we have now. And that we currently don't even have the glimmerings of what it's going to look like in 25 years. So having said all that, we do know that we can continue to have devotionals, and that the more engaged we are with different kinds of music and quotes, and the more we are bringing in cultural means of expression in our devotionals, the more we're going to bring in all different kinds of people. During youth groups, animators, a delicate balance between guiding and directing. We don't direct them, we guide them. It's up to the junior youth groups to determine how they want to serve their community. We want to understand the difference between white time and Black or colored people time. It used to be that we would get through the Ruhi courses, book one, and say, oh, well, we could do that in 3 weeks. At the most, we could do it in 3 weeks, once a week. No, not if you're using it as a tool that it's meant to be used as. And if you're using it to address racial justice, it's going to take you more time, because you're going to have to do some discussion about how you're going to use each one of those quotes in your day-to-day work. That practical application piece. How can I practice a practical application of working to contribute to the betterment of the world in my day-to-day life in my own little community? And that's going to take more time. Children's classes, we want to make sure we are addressing racial justice at age-appropriate levels for children's classes. Everything that we do has to incorporate racial justice and anti-racist ways to think and to behave. Social action and discourse in society, twofold moral purpose. What is that? Do we understand it? Because this is now for a number of the plans that have come out from the Universal House of Justice. They have used this word as our marching orders. Twofold means we are working on ourselves, spiritualizing ourselves, transforming ourselves while we are helping to transform others. And then how are you centering people of the eye, people of African descent in the decision-making and planning, as we have been advised to do? Then I just want to read this passage from the Universal House of Justice. Within the context of the framework governing your activities, it is necessary to carefully examine the forces unfolding around you to determine where your energies might reinforce the most promising initiatives, what you should avoid, and how you might lend a distinctive contribution. It is not possible for you to effect the transformation envisioned by Baha'u'llah merely by adopting the perspectives, practices, concepts, criticisms, and language of contemporary society. If we're doing things the same way that people who are not Baha'i are doing them, then we are not doing what we're supposed to be doing. This is what this is telling us. It is not possible for you to effect the transformation envisioned by Baha'u'llah merely by adopting the perspectives, practices, concepts, criticisms, and language of contemporary society. Your approach instead will be distinguished by maintaining a humble posture of learning, weighing alternatives in the light of his teachings, consulting to harmonize differing views and shape collective action, and marching forward with unbreakable unity in serried lines. That's for all of us, Black, white, people of color, indigenous people, for us to consult to harmonize differing views and shape collective action, and marching forward with unbreakable unity. in serried lines. Ya Baha'u'llah. Thank you, people.
Yeah. Yeah, Baha'u'llah, Pa. You got me fired up, Sue. You've got people in here fired up.
Yes, she has.
Yes, that's right, Pat. Rebecca's rocking her head over there. Yeah. This was wonderful, just wonderful, and so much information. I'm going to ask you a question that I know I'm going to get. Are your slides available to be shared? Or you can let me know later. And if they are, friends, they will come to you in an email. You're on mute, Sue. I don't mean to put
Oh,
you
there I
on the
see
spot.
Helga now. It's Helga. I was trying to think of her first name. Yeah, she was in Liberia. I met her in Liberia, her and her husband.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Think
the
on
reason I'm
it, but I know I'll
hesitating.
get asked.
Huh?
I said, think on it. I know I will get asked.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to answer now. So
Okay.
friends, if they do become available, they'll be sent out to you along with the notification that this presentation is on our YouTube channel. Okay. All right.
I already snitched 3 of them. Is that all right?
What did you do?
I snitched 3 of them.
Well,
They were
okay.
so good. Oh,
Well, they're all in the public domain, I'm sure.
I'm
But
quick with the
anyway.
little button.
Yes, I see. Okay, so friends, we're going to go into a conversation now with one another about this. So I'd like to ask you to please use your reaction button to raise your hand, if you have a comment or a question for Sue. And we'd really like to delve into what she shared with us. What are you learning? What struck you? What didn't you know before? What moved you? Because it's important. Something that triggered for you by hearing it spoken can be something insightful for someone else. Okay. And I know we've had 1 or 2 questions regarding critical race theory broadly. But with that, I'll leave that there for now and invite those who had those comments or questions to raise their hand and address them. So Winnie, you're up first. Go right ahead.
Okay, I want to say thank you for some marvelous meat to chew on. Not only personally, but I have a class on racism that have done for a senior learning group. And I'm going to have an awful lot more stuff to add to it. Thank you. What struck me particular about Wendell Berry's Hidden Wounds, I hear screaming out of that the reason why people are so upset about adding truth to history classes for kids. The whole thing about their own personal fears and having to recognize their own biases, even though they may be trying to keep them subconscious. But the fear that people have of teaching the truth about our history is I think, explained to a big extent by the comment that you quoted from Barry.
Yeah, his book is really it's a small book, and it's small in size, and it's also small as far as the amount of pages. So it's
because I've got a list of about 10 more books I need to read.
But for anyone who would like to read what he has to share, it's called Hidden Wounds. It's worth it.
All right, thank you, Winnie. Okay. Oh, Ravid. Ravid? Okay, Ravid, Leah, you're next.
No, that's Denny and Raymond.
But it says Ravid. You guys are trying to trick me up.
Thank you so much. You just had so much to contribute, and such important things. And Wendell Berry has written so many wonderful things about agriculture.
He has, yeah.
How it has been so messed with by this dominating affair. But I just want one question: were you surprised at how fast critical race theory became a thing?
No, I wasn't surprised. Because it fits right in with wanting to squash anything that's going to force people to address truth.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Thanks,
it's
Jenny.
yeah, it's
Go ahead.
part of twisting every positive thing to make it somehow a target.
Yeah.
It's interesting that The Hidden Wound is the name of a chapter of Heather McGee's book, The Sum of Us.
Mm.
She uses that in to talk about some very important issues, but the book is terrific. I've been a number of things that you mentioned were mentioned in this book as well. But I also learned a great deal tonight, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I have The Sum of Us, but I haven't started reading it yet.
It's terrific.
Been reading a lot. Thank
you, David and Rennie. I'm going to ask Paul Desmond Lowe. He put a question in earlier in the chat, which meant it came directly to me or to Nason. And Paul, are you still here? Would you like to ask your question? It's about critical race theory, so this is a good opportunity, good time to bring it up. Are you still here, Paul?
Yes, I am, and thank you. And
You're
the question
welcome.
was directed to the doctor. And yes, just I'm curious if she's ever been accused of teaching or presenting critical race theory and how she responded to that, and maybe what her views are on the context and content of what she shares as it relates to the context and context of what she shared.
Are you talking to whether I have ever taught critical race theory?
If you've been accused of, if anyone has said to you, well, stop, I don't want to hear what you're saying, that's critical race theory. How did you respond to that? And how do you view both the content and context of what you share in relation to critical race theory?
Oh, that's an interesting question. No, I've never had anyone to accuse me of teaching critical race theory. I wouldn't mind. Because it means that something is getting across. But the other part of the question was whether I was teaching it or teaching some.
In essence.
What was the second part of it? Was I?
Yes, in essence. Do you consider what you just presented or what you present a caption of critical race theory? Well, I guess then we'd have to work with definitions to be certain.
Yeah.
But I hear it being referenced. So
for me, I can't say that it's critical race theory because I don't know enough about. There's a lot of conversation across the internet about critical race theory, but I've not read an actual document that talks about the real critical race theory and how that was to be used in the school system. And so I can't say whether it was going to be as sweeping as what I tried to share, or whether even just alluding to the need to share our real history in America was too much. I don't know what depth critical race theory goes into. So I just can't say.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Paul, let me let everyone know that I think this is an appropriate time to do this on the very question that you asked. On February 12th, we are having a workshop with an organization called Braver Angels.
Oh.
And what they specialize in is depolarizing conversations on any hot topic. Ours is going to be on race, obviously. And that would certainly be a great opportunity to learn skills conversational skills that really you can use in any uncomfortable conversation with someone of a significantly differing viewpoint. And so I want to just point that out and invite you and everyone else here. An email, of course, will go out about this with the registration information as well. But that's coming up soon, and we're really looking forward to that. It will give us all some skills on how to better communicate with one another on these very difficult topics. So thanks for bringing
That's my
that up.
son that's going to be talking.
Thank you.
Yes,
Awesome.
yes. Yes, it is. Yes,
And he's
it is.
here. I saw him. He's here tonight.
He is. He
Yeah,
is. And
yeah,
he
he is.
texted me how good you were. He thought he was texting you, and he texted me. And I said, yeah, she's on fire. Okay, Rebecca, thank you for waiting. Rebecca,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you so much for this tonight, Sue. I knew some of it, but there was quite a bit that I was not familiar with. Just a comment, when we're talking about curriculum in the schools and what's being taught in the schools and how beyond the CRT, I'm working in a classroom now, and in our school, we're working on anti-bias and reviewing how that shows up in the school and how it looks. And I am appalled at what is in the textbooks, not only, and it's so subtle, what's left out or the way things are worded, and it's horrifying. And I feel like this is a huge piece of trying to make change in our country. And what holds it, part of what holds it in place is exactly what you said. And when you said it, I went, oh my God, that's it. It's fear, because as soon as the truth is told to our first graders, our second graders, our third graders, all of this begins to unravel. All of these systems, if we teach that next generation the truth, it all starts to crumble.
Yeah.
And that's very powerful. And that's going to be what, like, we can't let go of that. We've got to keep that big lie on those lower grades, much less college, which is where CRT is coming from. And I'm seeing it in the lower grades. I did have one other question. This may not be the place, so I'm happy to get my learning somewhere else. In one of your slides, it was something for Baha'is to be looking at in their communities. And it said, understand the difference between white time and Black and people of color time. And I thought, what time is she talking about? If this is a good place for you to educate us, I will be grateful to you. And if not, I will get my education in another track.
Well, you know, the person that I need to have here to fully and more effectively answer that question is Joy DeGruy, because she's the one that really has studied and done the work dealing with the difference in time. And we're going to just take two different main groups, white Europeans and Black Africans. And the way she describes it is, okay, so you live in Europe and you have how much time to plant your garden or plant your farm, do your farm, plant whatever it is you want to plant. And then how much time do you have to harvest it before winter sets in? So time becomes a very important thing. And also there's a whole idea of being object oriented. And that's because you have to determine, everything is about how can I get this done, get these plants in the ground, get them weeded, take care of them, get them out, store the food so I don't starve in the winter. In Africa, the growing season is 6 months out of the year. There's the dry season and the rainy season. I know, I live there. And so you can have like 2, 3 planting and harvesting periods before the rainy season hits in. Not only that, what's happening with all the trees and the bushes and the fruit is growing. You can reach up and pluck what you want to eat. There's no winter to destroy the vegetables and the fruits and so time is like, oh, if I don't do it today, I can do it tomorrow. Now that's not laziness. I want to make sure that that doesn't come across that way. That's just a different mindset about whether you need to always be rushing, work, or whether you can say, okay, I'm going to work and get this done, and then I'm going to do this. You have lots of other things that you can do. And so colored people's time is what this, only Black people use that term. It just means that,
no, just laughing. Yeah, don't.
No,
use
it
that
just
term
means
unless
that
you're Black.
I have time to get there. Now, the problem with that when you're living in America is that if I show up at 5 or 10 minutes after, I'm late. I should have showed up 5 minutes before time. And so it affects everything that we do, including our study, including our schoolwork, it affects all of that. And so it depends on who is working with the children. If it's a white person working with Black kids, they're going to have a certain perception of those Black kids because they are not, because see, it becomes an internalized thing, it becomes a DNA thing. And so your DNA tells you it's an internal clock versus something external. And it tells you how much time you have. And so if you're living in a country, not just Africa, but any country where you have more time, they might say, like they used to tell me, I come in just now. And I'm thinking, oh, they're coming right away. No, it means I might come this afternoon or tonight or tomorrow. And you just have to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Rebecca. Mayron and Rick would like to know, and this one I'm sure she's going to say yes to, if you would share your study guidelines for the Ruhi Book 1 that incorporates racism. We can include that in our email to everyone about
I'll
that.
send it to you and then you can send it out.
Okay, great. Colette, thanks for waiting.
Thank you. Sue, I was just going to comment on that same phrasing, having spent a lot of time in South Africa, where people would routinely say, oh, I'll be there just now.
Oh, it's there too.
So, and that could be anywhere from an hour to a few days. So, you know, I had to chuckle when you were saying that. And, you know, some of the other things that I was thinking about, especially with critical race theory, because that's been a really hot topic here in my neck of the woods. And, you know, as was pointed out, critical race theory is a graduate level course taught in law school, period. End of discussion. That's what it is. The implications that have been taken from that have to do with all of this thing that we were talking about with fear. And also one of the things I've been thinking about with that, and maybe you might think about this or elucidate it a little bit more, is, you know, there's a lot of hue and cry about, you're trying to force guilt on my poor children. And, you know, and what I see from that is that there's a lot more shame that is creeping into these people's psyche that are protesting loudly. And they're calling it that we're forcing guilt on people because they don't want to acknowledge their own shame of the truth of what really happened. And what it continues to happen today. And then the other piece of that for me was that Robin DiAngelo's next book, After White Fragility, had a really profound impact, and that's Nice Racism. So I don't know if you've had a chance to see that.
No, I didn't. I wasn't aware of that one.
It is so amazingly powerful because for a lot of us white folks, white fragility had a sting to it. Whereas nice racism makes you really sit up and go, oh, I didn't realize that I was doing that. Oh, I didn't realize I was thinking that. So it's really been something that I've used in a couple of the racism dialogues that I'm part of. And then back to fear real quick. The acronym FEAR from many, many years ago is false evidence appearing real, which gets transformed into face everything and rejoice. So thanks for everything you do. I have loved you and learned from you for 20 years or more and continue to do so. And oh, one final comment about your son's Braver Angels program. I have been in Braver Angels for the last 2 years and have been commenting and trying to encourage people to come to different Braver Angels groups. So I am thrilled that it's going to be presented as part of this program. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Colette. Okay, before Helga, let me just handle a couple of chat things here. If you would restate the name of the book, or Winnie, if you would put in the chat the name for the book you were speaking of, then we can just put that direct to Winnie. And another one asked, Angelita asked, hey Angelita, what is the title of the video on white fatigue and white supremacy? If you could share that.
It's called White Fatigue.
Okay. There we go.
On
okay,
YouTube.
Helga. Okay, Helga. Hello.
Hello. Actually, what I wanted to say was kind of already said, referring back to the critical race theory. The whole conversation took me totally by surprise because I always understood it as a theoretical framework for doing research in social science. So I don't, it's kind of strange how it got adapted into a completely different realm. And when it comes to teaching children and analyzing the textbooks, I remember in one course I taught for aspiring elementary school teachers, a third grade social studies book. They defined slavery as working without pay. And I mean, these kind of falsehoods get so perpetuated still today. It's amazing.
Yes.
Thank you, Helga. Nason's put some references in the chat for those that you have asked. Thank you, Nason. It's one of the things we love about him so much.
I think Vanessa has her hand up.
Yep, Vanessa's next.
I wasn't sure if you saw it.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
Hello, and thank you, Sue. A
You're
lot
welcome.
of information, very useful. I want to speak on this whole attention and focus on critical race theory being taught in schools. We must remember who is the first educator? The mother. So it doesn't take, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be taught in school, but we don't want to take the onus off of white parents teaching racism, either subtly not knowing. You are an educator at home, and there's something called generational racism that is taught in a white child from infancy, and it is reinforced through childhood by the attitudes and actions of their parents. And that's very powerful. So a lot of times it's put on the teachers in the schools to do a lot of the work that also needs to be done at home. And a lot of times it's like, okay, let's put that on the school. Let's put that on the teachers. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but I also want the focus to be on the parents as well, on those families. The work that you're talking about, Sue, that needs to be done, that the whites need to do within themselves and within their families, is to understand and recognize that you are perpetuating a generational thing that's being passed down, starting at infancy, through childhood, into adulthood, and those adults do the same with their children. So what you're saying is so very important, that we keep that focus on us doing the individual work as well, that we have to do individually to combat this, like you said, racism just keeps changing its face, so to speak. And recognizing that and doing the work at home, teaching your children and being mindful of your possible racist attitudes and ways that has been socialized into, you know, each family, knowing that the mothers, the fathers are the first educators that can change that process.
I'd like to say something. You know, this, and thank you, Vanessa, for your comments. This is not a simple, straightforward kind of thing that we're dealing with. Generally speaking, it's true that parents are the first educators, but everybody is struggling in this. Everybody is struggling. And so I think that it's a multifaceted, just like the House of Justice called racism a multifaceted thing. The way in which we deal with it also has to be multifaceted. And so we want to be careful to make sure that we are all in this, to make it clear we're all in this together. We're all working together to try to make a difference. And the reason for sharing this information tonight for my white brothers and sisters is so that they can know that the kind of harm that they also are suffering. Because racism, I call it living in a soup. Because you could call it a soup, you can call it an ocean, you can call it whatever you want. I call it a soup. You know, we're all living in a soup of racism. I love the term pathogens because it affects all of us. It just affects us differently. And so we have to deal with it differently. When Shoghi Effendi talked about dealing with racism, he gave us each marching orders of how we should do that. But the whole reason why we have to have racial racism taught in children's classes and junior youth groups is then we don't have to worry that they are not going to get it because of whatever else they are, wherever else they are. If they get it in their children's classes and then in their junior youth groups in their community, in their neighborhood, they're going to take that just like they take the prayers and the songs that they learn back to their parents and share that with their parents, and their parents learn from them, and then the parents want to learn more. It's be the same thing with what they're learning about racial justice. They'll take it back to their parents. Look what I learned today. I learned such and such and such a thing. Oh, okay. And the parents can see that this is not something to fear. That's what's brought up here about the whole idea of fear. I think that's simplistic. I think that's one of the possible things that people might be feeling. But I think there's also anger because you don't want to be perceived as someone who's a white supremacist. But yet this soup that we're living in, there's those benefits that white people get from what white supremacists do. And so it's just like so much that we can't just say, well, if you do this and if you do this, it's like following the House of Justice guidance is probably the best way for us to go, because otherwise when we're using our own, it's like each of us having our own idea about what's the best way to go. And you could be right, I could be wrong, but if we're following the House of Justice, we're all on the right path. Those are just my thoughts to add on to what you were saying, Vanessa.
I like how when you were reading that letter, you know, when you said that if we're following the way that the world are doing things, you know, we're not following the right path, follow the way that the House of Justice are leading us. And we know we are going the right way. I really like how you emphasize that.
Yeah. Especially now as things are falling apart more and more, deteriorating more and more, we have to be clearer and clearer about what path we are on. You're muted, Sherilyn.
I want to get one of those signs. You're on mute. But I'd have to show it to myself. Okay, Ellen and Bill, thank you for for waiting. Go ahead, please.
Sue, this is Bill Alhauser, and I'm.
Oh, Bill, hey.
Good to see you. I'm glad to see you. Grateful to hear what you had to say.
And see me well?
Yeah, and see you well. That means healthy well, yes. I'm really grateful for your emphasis on the House of Justice. And I'm eager to get your slides when you're willing to distribute them to us and refresh myself on them, because I read them and then I read them and then it's like I never read them. They're so profound, and like you said, we have to memorize them, or at least I do. But in the process, one of those sentences in there was, you can't do this work using the current cultural concepts, phrases, methods, criticisms, etc. And I thought, and I don't even remember what the subject of the sentence was. What can't you do? But it strikes me that, were you making a parallel between working to eliminate racism and doing, and bringing into fruition Baha'u'llah's vision for the world? Because it sounds like the same thing. It sounds like we can't do either one based on the old and methods and the old concepts and ideologies. And maybe if we work at eliminating racism, it takes us a good step down that path toward improving the world generally, because it makes us more able to hear each other, to see each other, to build a culture of learning that's not based on an individual or a single viewpoint.
Yeah, everything you're saying is absolutely correct. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. We still have to do it according to the guidance. I have it up. It's the phrase you're referring to. It is not possible for you to effect the transformation envisioned by Baha'u'llah merely by adopting the perspectives, practices, concepts, criticisms, and language of contemporary society. That's the one you're referring to, right?
Right.
Yeah. And they talk about within the context of the framework governing your activities. So that means the framework we've been working within for all these years now. That's what they're telling us. That's where we should be.
So you took a general statement and applied it to the elimination of racism. Am I hearing that right?
Well, actually not, because it comes from the July 22nd letter from the House of Justice on racism. And so that was one of the statements.
That's very profound. That's the way I feel about the Baha'i faith generally. And so I'm thinking, the work to eliminate racism is boot camp for the rest of the things we have to
Mhm. Mhm. You're correct.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the precursor. We don't get a new world order without it or with it, yes, we could say. Angelita, thank you for waiting.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
so much. Hi, Sue. This has been fantastic.
Thank
There
you.
was
Good to
so-
see you.
Thank you. There was so much there, but I just wanted one of the takeaways out of the many was is the video on white fatigue, and I thought it was a fantastic video in a synopsis, intersecting with white supremacy. And intersecting what you said about the fact that racism is multifaceted. And that was just so on target that white fatigue, whites get tired, even blacks get tired, that fatigue, but we need to keep bouncing back. And just as racism is multifaceted, that opposition is multifaceted too.
Yes.
And if I, excuse me, and if I may, I've taught critical race theory. I had to smile when you said that you were not surprised when critical race theory came back. I smiled at that because I was shocked.
Oh,
okay. Critical race theory, yes, it started in the law schools, but way back in the 70s as intersectional theory, as analysis, historical cultural analysis, legal analysis of race. And so now we have the white supremacists who may think they're not white supremacists, who are bringing this back in the last year or the last 2 years. And most of us in the academy are like, why are they talking about this? Because CRT is not taught in elementary schools. It's not taught in high schools. It's not in the Virginia curriculum, even though it was denounced in Virginia. And everybody is saying, why is this politician banning CRT when it's not even taught? But
this is fascinating what you're sharing.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am. But this is a way for white supremacy to negate the teaching of the truth of African American history. And if anyone wants to look into this, Crenshaw, Crenshaww, her first name is Kimberly. She began all of this back in the 70s, but now CRT is being used to oppose knowing the truths of African American history. The 1619 Project, which I presented in one of my summer workshops when George Floyd was killed. The 1619 Project is a fascinating study of the African American presence, the African presence that began in this country before it was even a country in 1619. So now they're putting that into this basket with CRT. So now CRT has taken on, for many communities, many politicians, it has become a negative type of teaching and banning it.
Wow.
It's something that's being used to go against. I mean, what you said resonated with me, Sue, that as Baha'is, we need to know about African American history, racism in America, the study of racism in America, especially for Persian Baha'is and whites. Not only Baha'is, but everybody. But in this context, we're talking about Baha'is.
Yeah.
And so I just began to get very nervous when CRT is brought up. Oh, we shouldn't deal with CRT. This is what CRT has done. CRT is partisan politics. We have to understand what CRT really is. And it's not going against the democracy. It's not going against history. It's including our history. And is it being critical of it? Well, if you say that there was slavery, is that criticism? Some people don't want to hear that. So I just wanted to say thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for this excellent video. I love the graphics in this video, White Fatigue.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us more information about critical race theory.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I put in the chat I can put in the chat some of those references that I just made, especially the 1619 project.
Okay.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Angelita. Thanks so much. Okay, Winnie, is this short and sweet? Because we have a couple of other people in line.
Yeah, it is. I just wanted to make a comment. You know, it's so true that it needs to be taught at home. However, that's the biggest complaint about those who are against teaching the truth about our history. Oh no, they're going to teach me something I don't want them to know, and that's up to me to decide what my kids should learn. So that's the dilemma there. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Winnie. Okay, Midge. Hi, Midge.
Hi, how are you?
Good, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So you asked us if we felt as whites about our ancestors being you know, enslavers, the ones who enslaved Africans and had racist ideas, and nobody picked up on it, and whether we felt guilt. What was the other one? Guilt and shame. Well, for me, I felt profoundly sad. I was so sad that my ancestors chose that path to demoralize and to view to go into the world of otherness. And I was embarrassed by it, you know, and it took a long time for me to reconcile it. And my parents found the faith when I was real little, and I grew up on Long Island in a neighborhood that was very diverse. So I've always been around a diversity of people. And when I was in elementary school through high school, I had a lot of friends of color, and I lost my white friends. I was called an N-lover. I was pushed into lockers. I was harassed by police because I had Black friends. And it always made me very angry and very sad. But what made me the saddest is that I didn't see Baha'is doing their work to say that's wrong. In fact, I got criticized for choosing the wrong kind of friend. This is from my older Baha'is. And when we had a Baha'i club in high school, and we wanted to pair with the African American club to support the teaching of Black history, and we were 2 girls and one guy. The one guy was my brother. And they said no, because we were 2 white girls and we would be taken advantage of. But guess what? We did it anyway. So I think all of the study is wonderful. And I think all the books are wonderful, but it's like putting gas in a car. The car can only take so much gas, then you have to go someplace. So my challenge to everybody is, what are you going to do with the information? Sue's talk is wonderful, but stretch yourself, have conversations, go out of your way. It won't hurt you, it will help you. Let your bud blossom in whatever way you can, because to be a tight bud is no life. We're all here to blossom. And this is a wonderful opportunity. So this is just one of my pet peeves that I hear, because I go to a lot of these things, and everybody talks about the wonderful information, but what are we going to do with it? We have to turn it into action. It has to become action in order for this change to take place, because information is just information unless we act on it. And you know, when when the first letter on race came out, my Baha'i community wasn't doing much. I joined Coming to the Table so I could learn to have conversations with people of color. And I started going spaces in my community that were owned by people of color. And those are simple little things that anybody can do. So I'm done, but let's take this wonderful presentation and find what lines of action we can do that can facilitate the transformation.
Thank you so much, Midge.
Yes, thank you very, very much. And you just said what this program is about. You know, we're here to learn. It's knowledge, volition, and action. And folks know, if they've been here before, that I will ask, so what are you going to do with this? And that's part of our conversation. So thank you. I love a cheerleader because I'm a cheerleader at heart. You know, let's go do this. Yes, we got everything we need. We got everything we need.
And you know what? Once you
go.
start doing it, it's not hard. And you get a lot of
No.
systems. You get a lot of confirmations. People that you need to see appear. It's just taking those first steps. So
that's right. And the
yeah.
first steps are often the scariest, you know, but you get that first success and it's like, wow, you know, that worked out, you know, but we can talk about that forever, but that really is the point of this. This series is not for people to come and say, oh, I went to this talk and it was so good and interesting and I learned a lot. Well, if that's all you're doing with it, then I'm sorry, you're not doing enough.
Right, and
You're
it's
not
called spiritual
doing enough.
bypassing when you use the title of a book or a quote instead of saying, I'm going to do this with this. The House of Justice has said this, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yes, yes. We're not here just to intellectualize, but to actualize.
Right.
Okay, actualize. So let's move on. We got a bunch of hands up here. You see, I told you all the conversations really start getting good later in the evening. You got to hang around. All right. So one thing that we do here, I know some of you may be new to the series, but we also give a preference to our friends of color that are in the space. Why? Because our voices typically are not heard. So we have a few here. And Paul, I know you've spoken already. Would you mind if I skip over you for right now and go to Sandra so that we could hear from her this evening?
Absolutely. No problem.
Thank you so much, Paul. Okay, and then we'll go to Carolyn and then come back to Russell and then Christina. Sandra, welcome. Hello. I'm glad you got your screen issue worked out. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you and everybody else. And thank you, Sue, for a great presentation. It's caused me to do some reflecting here, and I'll go into it a bit deeper later, but it's kind of given me a different viewpoint about my second husband, who was a white guy. And apparently a lot of conflict that he was having from his community. You know, that's a tall order when you're meshing two cultures together, and to have that kind of understanding. We had the faith, but we didn't utilize it very well, okay? But I'm kind of thinking, well, you know, yeah, so he had those kind of pressures, and it was, again, hard for me to see because I've never been white. But anyway, thanks for that. I'll think about it. It reminds me of something that Nathan Rutstein, the late Dr. Nathan Rutstein, said in one of his talks and whatnot. He was saying that when he was younger, his parents had not taught him to be racist or to look at people of color as different, but little things like walking down the street and having an African-American come at you from another direction, and your mother or father grabbing your hand really close and kind of pulling you in. No words were said, but the body language was speaking it all. And so he had to reconcile all of that in college when he was rooming with an African-American. He was laying there late at night thinking that he was going to be knifed to death. And he didn't know where these feelings were coming from. So that led me to go ahead and deal with some issues that I was having, because this same second husband that I was married to, we had a sports card shop, and there were these little fellows, little African-American fellows that would come in probably every week. And I was embarrassed and hurt with myself because I was watching these little guys probably more than I would have been watching little white guys that came in. And I was embarrassed. I was hurt. How could I be feeling this? How could I be doing this? And so I made a conscious effort that when they came back to the shop again, I would deliberately not watch them. You know, I would remain neutral. I wanted the shop to be a place of comfort and joy for them to come to every week. And you know, it worked. And eventually we started having conversations, and I realized that I knew one of the little guy's mom. And anyway, that was my little dive into how we can turn on within the culture of how certain things are still enmeshed in us to do for whatever, however we want to look at it. And then I guess the last thing I'd like to say about this whole, the critical race theory, the this, the that, there are so many positive contributions that African Americans and other cultures have made to America. I would love to see the schools focus on that. This whole, you know, I know that slavery, the white supremacy, all of this it's a painful legacy that all of us share in. But there's some good things that we can be looking at, more positive things that I think the children can respond to, and maybe even some of the white people, because I'm sure that white people are feeling guilty, and Black people are hurt. It's like, I don't want to see any more bodies hanging from a tree, any more Black bodies. It just tears me up inside to see this stuff. And so, if we can we have contributed so much to this country in building America. If we can maybe focus in on that and get away from this, oh, well, y'all are gonna tell them how bad we were to you. And we, you know, no, we don't even need to go. We can go there, but in a tasteful way and in an appropriate manner. But I'm just saying that outside of that, please let's focus on the positive things, because our children need to learn these things in school as well. All of our children need to learn about how all of us have contributed to America. So, you know, if we don't do that, I think we're just the sore is just gonna fester, and it's just gonna get bigger and bigger, and it's gonna pop. And for what? So anyway, thank you, Sue. Thanks everybody for being here. And that was just my little two cents.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna jump over and assert some additional privilege since Sue's eldest son is here. And he's also with Braver Angel, so he wants to come on and tell you all a little more about it. So Russell, jump on in here. Russell, are you there? He probably went to go feed the kids. So let's go back. Okay, Carolyn McCormick, thank you for waiting. Are you there, Carolyn?
Yes, I was unmuting. I'm using my phone and I'm incognito today because I think I have a mild case of COVID in a triple vaccinated person of myself. But I felt something very strongly at the beginning when we were trying to deal with the white person's response. And I don't know that I could put it into words because I have a pretty diverse background. I moved to this county as a new Baha'i practically to be a home front pioneer. And it's a triracial county in North Carolina.
Where are you?
in North Carolina.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
tribal, Indian, black and white. When I came here, it was about equal proportions. It's changed a whole lot in the last years, but and then I got 3 stepsons that are white, and I got an adopted daughter that I expected 4 months, excuse me, who's biracial, black and white together. And now she's 35, pregnant and not vaccinated. And
Well,
I'm
we won't
adopted.
go into that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to give these details. I just want you to realize that I'm pretty experienced. I grew up in a town all white, but in the 60s, we tried to get a black exchange student because we'd had a German person, we'd had an Italian person, and we wanted to deal with, if we could, get a scholarship for someone from Mississippi to come to our town. And it split our town in half, but no real violence occurred. We just had a lot of discussion and the tears, for me anyway, because she didn't come. And anyway,
hi, Mom.
I feel a lot of guilt about racism, and it's keeping me from doing a lot of interacting except through work, which I do. But there was something that was said, and I'm not sure I could even intellectualize about it, that made me suddenly feel a lot freer to love God and to do my work with God's help. But it was a good thing, and I can't figure it out, but to intellectualize about it, but it was deep.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just speak to that a little bit. It's good that you're feeling, and it's okay that you don't know, that you can't intellectualize it. I've found it in my work, in Copper to Gold and in other spaces, it's often difficult for white people to develop compassion and empathy and to recognize their own feelings. And so coming at this, that something has hit you in the heart, in the spirit, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Consider that a good thing. And it will work its way up to your head later on. Don't worry. It will work its way up to your head. But that it started in the heart first, that's awesome. Sue, do you have any comments? Yeah. You're on mute.
No, I was just listening, and I appreciate that she had the kind of feeling she did with what the white person was sharing. But I have nothing to say about it other than that.
All right. So we're going to skip again. It looks like Russell Ballew is back in the house. Russell.
Hi, Mom.
Go ahead.
I thoroughly enjoyed your talk, Mom. Thank you for sharing. And
You're
Sherilyn,
welcome.
yeah. And
I'm trying to get as good as you.
Oh, Lord. We're all under God's grace. We're all trying to do God's work here. Sherilyn, this is a fantastic platform. And so a thought that I wanted to share. I heard someone talk about what we're going to do with all of this knowledge. And next week, I believe on this platform, we're going to be doing a conversation about race and how we have the skill to enlist other people, particularly white folks, in this conversation. Before people can really get into doing the work that my mom has described, and you folks have been doing so beautifully with Copper to Gold, we have to actually just get into the room. And right now, the country is so polarized about the issue of race. And for any number of different reasons, whites are by and large reticent, reluctant. They don't even know how to start. And we are called as the Baha'is to bring light, to bring love, and to bring people in. If it's not us, who else? And so next week, when we do that depolarizing conversations about race, I'd like to challenge folks to invite some of their friends who are not in these spaces yet, right? Who we know may be interested and want to try to understand and would like to get some skills to start having the conversation. Because before you can do the work and have the conversation, sometimes you have to have that bridge. And this depolarizing conversations about race is how we get the skills to go ahead and have conversations that connect hearts. It's a beautiful thing. Sherilyn, have I misdescribed anything here? What say you?
Just one very important thing. And that is, it's not next week, it's February 12th. He is so ready to do this. Russell is actually one of the moderators for that. He's been trained in this, and he'll have a colleague, that is also trained in this quite well, and a whole team of people. And so that's February 12th. It's on our Facebook page right now. It's an Eventbrite registration, so you can go and register. Spaces are limited. We have a 500-person capacity. There will be breakout rooms. You will get to do hands-on. You will get to meet other people from around the country. So
this is an
really going to
outward-facing
be
event.
Yes.
Sorry to jump on you, Sherilyn, but
No, good way to put it. Yes.
This is about building our skills to have the conversations that are meaningful, right? That connect people to the teachings of our faith and the light of our faith. And what's really cool is that Steve Sarowitz is going to be participating. John Wigley, who is involved with Copper to Gold, he's going to be co-moderating. And what we're asking is that you bring a friend, bring someone who's not a Baha'i that wants to start having conversations and wants to get some skill. Sorry, Sherilyn. But
oh, no, thank you. And also a family member, maybe there's someone you've been trying to have these conversations with. It's like, hey, here's a place where we can go and learn how to communicate better with one another in a non-judgmental kind of way. It's on our Facebook page right now. It will also go out as an announcement by email to everyone, as we do for all of our presentations. It will not be at this Zoom link. It will be on Braver Angels site, their Zoom site, but you do have to pre-register. I'll get that, but that will be coming out to you. So we encourage you to go to our Facebook page, Racial Healing, Racial Justice. Just look it up, it's right there, and it should be in upcoming events. So yeah, thank you, Russell, for speaking, to it more. I think I've gone through, well, I've observed one. I wanted to see what it was like myself, how this program was designed. And it's quite an experience. And it's something, again, I cannot stress enough, two really important things about it. The skill set you will learn there, you will be able to use with your siblings, with your spouse, with anybody. It's not only about race. So it's well worth it, just in that regard. And then the second thing, as Russell pointed out, is that it is outward facing. So it is going to be an opportunity to have conversation with people who may not think the way you do. Maybe just a little bit, or maybe a whole lot. And that's important. So it's a great place to practice. And everyone that comes to this space comes there with that intention, the desire to have meaningful, productive conversation. Everyone
learning how to do that. We're all learning
Yes.
how to do it.
Yes,
Amen.
that's right. That's
Sherilyn,
right.
you got the gospel.
So you're going to be in good company.
Yes.
Go ahead, Russell.
Mom, I love you, but I got to go. I've been making food. That's why I've been not on the Zoom link, and I'm setting the family down to eat. So love you guys. And
just one thing. It is on white people time, right? I seem to remember from when I went. They start and they end.
So Mom, so just a point, this is a space for white people, a safe space for white people to work through how they engage so that they can get on the path, right? So yes, it is on white people time.
No, I was just being lighthearted about it because we talked about white time versus black time.
And I'm taking your lighthearted and making it serious to make a point, and that is, this really is a great place to invite whites that, maybe there hasn't been something where you felt comfortable bringing them because it might be a little too heavy, this is that great bridge event. But yes, it is. Yeah, that's it. Okay, guys. Sorry.
All right, Russell, thank you so much.
Love you
That's
guys.
one of
Bye-bye.
the sons I was telling you about that Sue carted with her off to Liberia. And it is for people of all races. They did design it for white people in particular, but there are, you know, Blacks and other people that participate. So it really is open to everyone. Okay, so let's go to Paul. Mr. Paul Lowe.
Hi. I actually just had a bit of a compliment. I'm a visitor here. I'm not a Baha'i, but neither am I a stranger to the Baha'i faith. I do have a good friend here, Siraji, that invites me to most of your events. We are brother and sister of another mother, so to speak, right? All the way back in a nice little village off the Atlantic in South America. So, but I want to commend you all for what I see here each time I do visit. I often, in my own sharing and teachings, remind individuals that diversity is hard work. Diversity sometimes even has to be legislated. That may be a strong word, but what I mean is there has to be intentionality in the work of diversity. So to get people here of different racial background, different cultural background, socioeconomic, such and such, to sit down and to listen to each other for this length of time, and especially my white brothers and sisters, when the wealth of the information being shared leans towards their accountability. It takes strength in every white brother or sister that's sitting here calmly and listening to this and not saying, you know, shut up, I'm tired of hearing this. Stop with the blame. And, you know, and I have Caucasian friends, I have white friends who are strong conservative, Republican, right wing, you know, whatever title you want to put there. And they say hard things to me. I'm still friends with them. They challenge me. I had one just a week ago. So well, Paul, on this subject of reparations and this stuff you keep talking about, what are you ready to do about the Africans who were part of the enabling work of the East India slave trade? What do you do about the chiefs that made millions of dollars in wealth also, and whatever else they got from Europeans within the trade? And though I don't know that there's direct evidence of that, but you know, I get the point. And are you willing to hold individuals of color who have also contributed to the destruction and the fragmenting of society as we see it today? And my answer, of course, absolutely is yes, I am. I'm willing to hold everyone accountable. But continue to do what you're doing. It's a good work. It's a great work. I learned something else here tonight from Dr. Ballew, and that is I used the material from Dr. Joy. I have her book, Post-Traumatic Slave. Forgot the full title of it, and I've used that book in many different presentations. I didn't know she was a Baha'i. I missed that somehow. So thanks for educating me on that there too, and look forward to continuing to share and join with you all in the future. God bless you.
God bless you, Paul. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. It's good to have you in the room, and please continue to travel with us on this journey. Thank you. Okay, Christina.
Thank you so much. And thank you all always for just continuing these fabulous bi-weekly meetings. It is such a great space. And really, I missed the very beginning of our conversation this evening, but when I came in and Sue was just being so patient and so meticulous and in-depth analyzing the anguish that white people may have and everything, it just always strikes me how much love. And I just thank you so much for your willingness to engage and, you know, share that understanding that you have and that you've developed through great depth. and that we can all find, you know, in the Baha'i perspectives on the very, very complex race issues. But always, you know, as a Black person, that you can, you know, go, you know, the pain of white people trying to make efforts just pales in comparison to the pain of Black people. So it's just always so wonderful to, and I just thank you for that patience. I appreciated also Midge's bringing up this whole question of white guilt. And I remember, I think this is something that a lot of young people go through, you know, young white people who may have been brought up in relative privilege, when they start learning about things that white people have done to the rest of the world effectively. And I often call it, because I get engaged a lot more with the developing world, I called it myself, you know, first world guilt. And I remember even talking about this anguish that I was going through in my 20s with a Navajo friend. And let's think about how amazing this person was to sort of say that it's not your fault. And he said, is that, you know, that was, once again, it's a kind of, he was being very kind. It's a kind of focusing once again on oneself, this kind of selfish focus almost, and turning the conversation again to the white person's perspective. So as I agree that there is guilt, and frankly, when people who are involved in CRT discussions say, do you want to make my children feel guilty? It's like, if you're children and you don't feel guilty, what kind of a human being are you? But anyway, that's, I think often people try to apologize for, you know, these conversations of trying to make people understand about systemic racism, which is very central to what people are using when they're using the code words of critical race theory. But anyway, I just wanted to, one of the things that I remember so strongly, one of the most fabulous conversations y'all had on here a month or so ago, was when Robert Henderson was talking about Abdu'l-Bahá's, someone had asked Abdu'l-Bahá, you are not blind to the failings of the American Baha'i community now, or of the individuals who, you know, were doing a lot of racist and other things. And we're just, I can't remember the exact context, but it has really stuck with me, is that Abdu'l-Bahá was saying that I can't build on that. You can only build on the positive. So what I think Midge was saying about action, or other people have said about, and this idea of the guilt, yes, it's there. And hopefully as white people, we are sensitive enough of human beings to recognize why we should probably feel guilty. But at the same time, as my Navajo friend said, it's not help, that doesn't help, that doesn't go anywhere. And so just bringing it back to, yes, take that, make it part of yourself, but you have to have the positive things to build on. And so let's, you know, 10 good qualities, 1 bad quality, focus on the 10 good, 1 good quality, 10 bad qualities, focus on the 1 good. Let's just, you know, focus on that. I don't want to forget about the bad. We all need to educate ourselves. Absolutely. But that discussion about how, you know, Abdu'l-Bahá, and you were saying earlier in the talk, he is a, you know, just a radical in the way that he went about bringing people's awareness, and but that the love that just emanated. I mean, obviously he was talking to Bahá'í, so he could do that. But thank you anyway, and I just love this space, and I hope we can just keep building on the positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what you just shared, Christina, just briefly, because I think when we consider the admonition to call ourselves to account each day, right? But that's not just what you did wrong. This is my personal opinion, okay? It's not just about what you didn't get right. It's also about what you did well, right? But then there's another piece to that where Abdu'l-Baha says, after you've identified, and I'm totally paraphrasing here, after you've identified whatever failings you have or had during the course of the day, set your mind to do better, ask for assistance, and move on. Move on. Do not let guilt drag you down.
Yeah.
It is a sign of recognition, which I think is healthy in that regard, but we should not wallow in it, let it consume us, because it does not allow us to create a new foundation on which to build. You don't forget it. You know, it's like, wow, God, I'm hit with this. Geez, I never knew these things happen. How horrible. Of course you should feel these feelings. But don't dwell on them. There's no time for guilt. We have no time for fatigue. We have no time for guilt either. So I just wanted to share that in that context about calling oneself to account each day and to move on. Say, I'm going to try and do better and move on. I'll tell you a funny one real quick. This is from Tom Price. And if you ever heard him give some of his talks, you know how funny he is. And he says, yeah, so if someone's a serial killer, you know, then promise you'll only kill 10 people the next day instead of 12. You know, that's the kind of analogy he uses. So it really gets
Really out there example, Sherlyn.
I know. I just couldn't resist though. It just came to my mind. It just came to my mind. I'm sorry. I like levity, you know, I like levity in what we do, because there is a joy in this, and it's a joy of learning together and inspiring one another. And everyone's comments, you know, and shares, they're inspiring. You know, you're inspiring. So thank you, Christina, for bringing those things up. Okay, Mike and Trish, and then I think Trish may be our last person this evening.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Mike.
I'm from Colorado. This is my first time in this particular group, and normally I don't speak at all. I see a lot of familiar faces because of attending some of the Pupil of the Eye sessions, and so I feel very much like I'm among kindred spirits here. And so I'm looking for some insights, Sue, and I'm trying to formulate what I'm trying to ask very much from the heart, and so it's not so much intellect here, but I'm looking at several of the points that you made, and it really struck a chord with me, mostly based on community and community building. And I'm looking at Baha'i community specifically, and I'm looking at this whole notion of action, right? And I'm looking at me personally, and action that I can take, and action that I've attempted to take, right? And I'm thinking about my community and where I live. And my community, and I'm trying to ask this generically because I think my situation is not so unique, and I'm trying to phrase this in a way that might help a lot of us, because I live in a relatively small Baha'i community. That's not unique, but I live in an all-white / Persian community. And I gotta say that most of the community that I'm from is middle to upper class, right? And so they're fairly wealthy people. I would say that I'm probably in the very bottom rung of the community that I live in. And so we we are talking about, well, we go to feast and we read these letters, these feast letters, right? And so many of these feast letters deal with our most vital and challenging issue. And I don't know if other communities do what we do, but we take turns reading paragraphs, right? And they're done so poorly, I'm sorry to say, because so many people struggle to read the paragraphs. And by the time we get done, what I hope for is that we're going to have a discussion about our most vital and challenging issue. And now with the pandemic, it's typically done over Zoom. And then we're done, and then the Zoom session ends. And there was no discussion about our most vital and challenging issue. And that was the whole point, but we didn't do it. We didn't discuss it. And that was what we should have been doing, right? And so time after time, my wish is that we were having that conversation, but we're not doing the conversation. So I keep thinking of ways, how can we actually do it? I mean, it was just dead silence and then the session is done. So I actually thought of some ways that maybe we can lead into something that actually not is only a conversation, but maybe we can take action on something. So let me just throw something out that we tried to do. Like I already described, we have a fairly wealthy community, and these people are thinking about wealth and property, and that's their mentality. It's a white community, wealth, property mentality. And having attended all these people of the eye sessions with Black and Indigenous people, what came to my mind is, why don't we talk about this idea of land acknowledgement, right? And let's talk about wealth, and let's talk about property, and let's talk about whose land we're really on. What if we just talked about an idea of a community project of getting to know our local Indigenous people and working on a community project with these local Indigenous people, and together with them, let's have our community develop a real, authentic land acknowledgement with our local Indigenous people. And I tried to pitch that at Feast through a Zoom session, and the Zoom host was so panicked at the idea, she shut the session off immediately, right? So we have a community that is so panicked at the idea of even discussing the idea of race that we are that averse to it, right? And so action, yes, I am among kindred spirits here. I want to do this so desperately. And my first attempt fell so flat. So my second attempt was to write our LSA and talk about why this was so wrong. And I'm falling flat at every attempt that I make. But I know I'm among kindred spirits, and I'm looking for some insight. And I know I'm not the only one that's in a Baha'i community that doesn't want to talk about race. But we know we're talking about how can we have conversations. And I know that one place we need to have this conversation is in our own Baha'i communities. And what better place than when we're reading those feast letters, instead of just reading the paragraphs, let's talk about the action, and let's talk at least about what it means. And I'll quit talking now, and maybe let's have some insight.
Yeah, I tell you, the conversations get better and better the later we go. Go ahead, Sue.
No, I was just going to say, I think what you raise and your concerns are very valid. I don't know that in this space that there's things we can say that would be very helpful, because again, each community has its own issues and its own needs and its own things that they need to consult about. If your community members, I'm guessing you have an auxiliary board member that you can talk with, or an auxiliary board assistant. But I think that, and you're not the only one. We have, since you say you come to a lot of the people of the eye gatherings, you probably have heard Barbara Talley talk about our own community, which is predominantly Persian, and it's pretty much the same kind of thing. So it just says that different communities are at different stages in their movement towards Baha'u'llah. and what is being asked of us today. And there is one of the letters I just went through where it talked about the different kinds of communities, and one of them is exactly like how you describe yours. Well, what I'm picking up from what you said. One of them is where everybody in the community, you know, they love each other. They have feasts every day. Every time they do the holy days. They maybe they study the guidance or read the guidance. And maybe individually they say their prayers and they read from the writings, but they're not growing.
Yeah,
they're not getting. So that's one kind. You named like 3 different kinds of communities, and because and it reminds me of what Baha'u'llah says about, similar to what Christ said about communities that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're saying that they are Christians, or they're saying they're Baha'is in name only for the most part, but they're lukewarm. They're useless when it comes to being able to move the faith forward, to do the work that that has to be done. But we can't worry about them. We can only worry about ourselves as individuals and find people who are like-minded, that want to do the kinds of things we want to do, and find a little niche.
Yeah.
If there's someone else in your community that is thinking along the same lines that you are, you find a niche and you work on that niche together. And you know, the thing is, when you're doing that, and when you're having devotions, I don't know if your community has devotions together, but you could have devotions with someone else, 2 or 3 people. That spiritualizes the whole community. You're not doing it just for yourself. You're doing it for the whole community. And as this community becomes spiritualized, and you're doing activities that you find meaningful, that's within the framework of the plan, you're changing things. Even though you may not see it, it's happening because we're told that it's happening. And so it's that or then about our believing what we're told by our central figures and by Shoghi Effendi and the House of Justice. And if we believe it, we just act on what we can do and not worry about what's not possible to do until others rise up to do it too. That's my only thoughts about it all. And again, you're right, you're not alone. There are many communities that have the same issue. And I think that answer would be the same for any of those communities.
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be a Baha'i. You can find someone who's not a Baha'i to work with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. You know, my response is very similar to Sue's as well. I know we're having a discussion the other day, and not Sue and I, but in a different space. And the Baha'i faith, there's such a thing as individual initiative. And you do not have to wait. I mean, it's wonderful, right? You know, we all wanted to be with the community and you know, all of that, and that's wonderful, but you don't have to wait for anybody. You really don't. And take your own initiative, reach out. I think that's a phenomenal idea that you came up with. That is phenomenal. Reach out to one of the local tribes. All you have to do is say you're a Baha'i. You don't have to say you're representing all the Baha'is, right? You know, I mean, even if you say it at all initially, but explain, you know, hey, we're a faith community. We want to properly, you know, learn how to acknowledge the land we're on. Do you know the impact of what that will have to the people you speak to in that indigenous community? Good Lord. Now, don't expect them to fall over you, all over you in open arms, right? Because there's a distrust thing going on there. But nevertheless, that is absolutely an astounding, phenomenal idea. And I know there's a talk, I think it's the talk that's on the Baha'i, our National Baha'i website by Paul Lample, where he talks about the 2 kinds of communities, the one that's inward looking and they're doing all of the administrative stuff, you know, they've got that down pat, right? But they're not growing. They're not growing. And then you have the other community where they've not adapted the administrative tools to their advantage. They may be teaching, but there's no coherence there. and everything's kind of scattered, you know, and again, no real growth showing. So yeah, it is a problem around, but it's, you know, it's individuals taking individual initiative that move things forward. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. But yes, you are not alone. That's an awesome idea. And if you'd like to chat later about some specific ways in which you can generate conversation in your feast, one that comes to mind, this is something we're doing in Copper to Gold. And one of the homeworks, and they're easy homeworks, well, kind of depending on how you look at it, is think of a 6-word phrase to start a conversation about race. The one that came to my mind immediately was to ask someone, what would it be like if you were Black? Boom, that's all you got to say. You know, so you can come up with questions, you know, like that may not be directly related to the guidance per se, but open up that up. Then you say, well, what does the guidance tell us about what it's like to be Black? You know, so think questions. We should always, when we ask questions, we get the conversations. That's my personal learning, questions. So what questions can you ask? Doesn't matter if anyone has an answer, it's the question that gets the conversation going. So yeah, just like to share that. And Saraje said in the chat that you should invite your whole community to Copper to Gold, and they would be more than welcome. Okay, so thank you so much, friends. That's awesome, Mike, really. Thank you for bringing that. Really, really enriched our conversation. Trish, hi, Trish.
Hello, my dear friends.
Hello.
I haven't really spoken on this Zoom before. I attend a lot of Zooms. First of all, I wanted to comment and thank Sue very much for all of the insight that you gave us. I'm always in a humble posture of learning since I've come to, I'm in California now, and I've been around, put it that way. So when I came back to certain areas and certain communities in the Baha'i faith, and I realized what is going on with my Baha'i brothers and sisters who are not understanding that we are actually the family of man. There is no race but the human race. And I have found it very disturbing in my own faith. I'll give you an example real quick. I'm a singer. I've sing with Van Gilmer when he comes to LA. I've sang with Tom Price in Chicago. I've sang with Eric Dozier. And one time in LA, when I came and we were singing these beautiful songs, and you know, we sing gospel music in LA with Van Gilmer, and they had a great big gathering, and the Persians were there, and the white people were there, and the Black people were there, and all of a sudden we started singing, and all the Persians got up and they left the room. And I was shocked. My first coming back to this country after being in St. Thomas and being in a absolutely extremely spiritual sense. That's where I met Enoch Olinga, if you know who he is, head of the cause. So I'm coming from a very spiritual place. I come back to LA and I'm greeted with people walking out as we're singing Black gospel music. So that was my entrance back into the United States. So what I'm been trying to do as I'm coming back to this country is to go to different communities and seeing what I can do to bring about the awareness of the humanity that we must instill in ourselves as human beings, that we are part of this flower garden of God. And I wanted to address Mike specifically because I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's in a community that I've gone to. And what I want to tell you is what I've told to some of my members when they say something derogatory or something against something that the Universal House of Justice says that we're supposed to do. I always ask, well, what would Abdu'l-Baha say? How would Abdu'l-Baha address this? And that kind of takes them aback. And also I greet them with absolute love and sincerity, because you're not going to get anything by anybody with anger. And the other thing that I wanted to talk to that Sue talked about was all the books and all the things that are being written about right now are so important, because there's so many people that are trying to continuously divide us. But right now, you know, the world, as Baha'u'llah says, is in this mode right now where the old world is crumbling and the new world is arising. Yes, it is. Let's be that positive force. Don't be negative. There's too many negativity people up there. Be that positive force for people. Learn what you can. Educate yourself. Go to your neighbor. Introduce yourself if you don't know them, especially people of color. You know, hi, I brought you some soup. I brought you some candy. I'm a Baha'i, and this Christmas I went to all my neighbors and brought them Christmas presents. They went, what? Why are you doing that? I said, because you're a child of God. Why would I give you a gift? They were shocked. They know I'm a Baha'i. Anyway, little things like that.
Yeah, sorry, Sue's gonna have to go. So was there a final point you wanted to make?
I wanted to say all these books that are being written right now, the one that I'm studying right now, I've done Joy's book, The Caste, Why Fragility. The one that I'm studying right now, this is really hope, is My Grandmother's Hands. I'm in a group with my sister. My sister is Joyce Olinga, and we're in a group right now, and we're studying this because it addresses trauma of the Black people, and we need to know that. We need for our own understanding. So
thank you so much, Trish.
It's just a few insights, and I love this call. And Sue, thank you so very much, and allow
You're welcome.
my dear friends.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Winnie, I know you're going to be quick, right? Maybe.
I'll make it quick. I understand exactly what Trish was talking about. There had been an attitude among older Baha'is that Black music is not dignified. It doesn't belong.
Right.
When I was singing with Eric Dozier at Green Lake several years ago, sitting in the front row was one of the people who definitely feels this way. Sitting there with her arms folded, you know, you could just see this doesn't belong here attitude. But I watched her, and pretty soon, believe it, I saw her toe tapping. And I just wanted to shout, "We got her!" I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You know, even the most stubborn, the music.
It's a happy ending. And as we know, some of our recent guidance last year from the House, or I'm sorry, I'm confused now, House or the National, you know, talked about devotionals and diversifying the content and the quality, not the quality, but the content, you know, of our devotional gatherings. So yeah, there's a whole lot more we could talk about all of that. And yeah, it's just been a really great conversation. Sue does need to leave. Often we will stay on another hour still talking.
Oh, another hour?
Yes, yes. But our presenters don't have to stay that long. And I know I really should go to bed, to be honest.
You haven't seen me when I'm at Barbara's activities. I'm among the first to leave.
Are you?
Okay, Barbara, see ya. Well, they go till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah, we don't go that long. We don't
10, 11 o'clock is good, but not after that.
Yeah, but it's about 10:30. It's about 10:30. Almost.
This has been wonderful though, and listening to everyone's thoughts and ideas and comments. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. You're a gift to all of us. You truly are. You truly, truly are.
Well, isn't that the beauty of us? We are gifts to each other in different ways.
We are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And we still have 65 people in the room, Sue. That's how good the conversation is. Usually we'll go till it dwindles down to like 30, 20, you know.
Well, to the
not
65 people in the room, I hope you have a wonderful good night's sleep.
Well,
still have another talk I have to work on tonight. So that's why I'm leaving.
Christina is going to take us all out. I've asked her to sing this beautiful prayer that she sings. Christina will tell us the language and the country. I've forgotten what it is, but it's from Africa. It's just beautiful. And we'll close out the evening with that. Thank you, everyone, for being here and contributing to the discussion. Take action over the next couple of weeks and tell us what it is. Come back and share. Come back and share with us in our space. Okay, thank you. Christina, it's all yours. Can we get her on Spotlight? There we go.
Thank you all so much. And in fact, a friend of mine has been traveling in Benin in West Africa, which is where this song is from. It's the remover of difficulties. It's in the Mina language, which is a sub-language of the Ewe, which is Togo, Benin. And it's a song, obviously, you know, this is the remover of difficulties, but there are so many ways in which the community in Benin sings this song.
Listen to this. This is the
And
end.
it's just, I actually asked my friend if he could please find me, ask the friends to sing it for me, because I know that over time I've lost some of the exact words. So please, anyone who knows this language, please excuse me. But I hope you'll get the spirit of it coming from the remover of difficulties. Mi linea na nuvole, hotunona me saumawe. Mi linea na nuvole, hotunona me saumawe. Mia senyoroko joromawe. Mia senyoroko joromawe. Ilike imawe. Mio plei ishento. Enuchi edo ile jolo. Abule.
Thank you so much, Christina. And I don't think you can culturally appropriate God's words, no matter what language they're sung in.
That was really beautiful, Christina.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Sue, so much for everything. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Take us out, Nason. Thank you.
Thank you.